Alrighty,
Hey.
we're officially on with our first week of Salt Church's Why, I believe. This is the first time we're doing it live streamed, not in person. There's some pretty obvious reasons why we're not getting everyone together, but I think it's a great way to do it this way anyway. I mean, you know, maybe if you have a busy Friday night, you might be watching this later, whatever.
We've got some amazing tech elves in the background that you will never see tonight. But,
props to them.
Yeah, they've done very cool.
very much so. So yeah, we've brought it all together. My name's Kelsey, and this is Tim. He's one of the pastors here at Salt Church, and he's going to be speaking to us tonight a bit later. We're going to be doing having this talk on the question of were we made to know God. But before that, we'll sort of be going through some other elements as well, having a bit of discussion around it, and we'll also have a Q&A at the end. So it's your opportunity to actually ask your questions, and there might be some stuff that comes up tonight that you're curious about as well. So yeah, make sure you sort of mull those ones over throughout the night. But however you're watching, whether you're in a group, you might be having a dinner party together, maybe you're, as I said before, you've stumbled across it later and you're watching it.
Could be in your bed, in your pyjamas,
got
just
the headphones on.
That's fine.
Yeah, you could be all...
Or not live even.
Not live, yeah. You could be not live, you could be live, you could be on your own, you could be with a group. There's plenty of ways to watch this one. We thought... we think it's a great opportunity to ask this question of, were we made to know God? And so I guess in that theme, we're going to be now asking you a question. First one of the night. So what is the worst thing you have ever made? We're going to be seeing if you guys can discuss that. And as we mentioned before, if you are in a group, this is a good one to discuss amongst the group. I'm sure there's
just to warm you up a little bit, get you used to chatting to one another. It is going to be a little bit interactive tonight, isn't it? So here's your icebreaker question, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. If we can't be doing it in person, at least we can
still have a chat.
So if you are in a group, you actually can mute us. We're going to keep talking in case there's some people watching this who are at home by themselves. So feel free to mute us, and there'll be a countdown that comes up on the screen to let you know when to come back. But for now, we'll give you a second to do that, and then we might
What's the worst thing you've ever made?
Chatting over that one, worst thing that you've ever made.
What's the worst thing you've ever made, Kelsey?
Gosh, it's hard to narrow it down to just one, I have to tell you. I've been trying to think about it. Top three. Well, definitely my top one would have to be just a food-related thing. I mean, one time I tried to make a grilled cheese sandwich on a stovetop, and I set the smoke alarms off. And so I don't know if that's more of a reflection on my cooking skill or my creativity skill or whatever, but that's probably was just one of my worst failures, I'd say, in life.
Wow. I feel like a grilled cheese sandwich is...
Yeah, it was. It's not a hard thing to make.
That's not filet mignon, is it?
No, not at all. Yeah.
Sorry.
I know.
Very
bringing
cool.
up my deepest, darkest secrets here.
There'll be a lot of food ones, won't there, for people? I imagine no one's been overly perfect in a cooking style.
Cakes, anything to do with...
Yeah. I remember when I would have been... I would have been younger than you. But when I remember I went to a conference in Tasmania randomly when I was like 16. I told the people I was staying with that I knew how to make an absolutely screaming mashed potato, and so they're like, yeah, sure. They bought, we bought the potatoes, and the truth is, I just watched my parents make it once and thought I know how to do it, and it ended up like if you think it's bad to get a grilled cheese sandwich wrong, getting mashed potato
it's just boiling potatoes.
That's pretty rough.
Pretty basic.
Yeah. What about in the art world? Have you got any creations that are...
Definitely my worst creations would all have to do with clay. I think in high school I did art, and I tried making a clay sculpture once, and I didn't realise that when you bake them, they kind of change shape or whatever. And it's like, geez, he came out pretty bad.
Yeah.
I think he fell over in the kiln as well, and but I still handed it in for one of my art projects, and little surprised my art teacher was not very impressed.
Oh, really? They didn't give you like the, you know, these days don't they kind of give you like the participation award?
Yeah,
sort of
just
thing?
like an average. Oh yeah, at least you tried.
Oh, you tried hard, Kelsey. Great job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can think back to pottery. Oh man, I made a sailing boat that was like, it was essentially just made of like long tubes of clay. Oh. And it was just what, you know, I don't know.
There's probably a lot of too many like fin parts in a sailing boat for it to really come out.
I think I just don't get art. Like, or maybe I really do, and that was excellent, but I just didn't realise it.
Postmodern,
you know, that was like really clever.
Bit of Picasso going on there.
But
the sail is underneath.
Yeah, it's hard to make things. I guess in a, I don't know. Unless you like, you know, these people who are just so amazing at making just about anything. Yeah. And then there seems to be everyone else.
Yeah, and it's like no matter what they put their hand to, it comes out and like, oh no, it was my first try. Yeah. Really, I don't know if I believe that.
Yeah, but, no, that's right. My daughter can make is it making to make a drawing? Is that cheating? She can draw birds. Oh, and it's like that's pretty impressive. So, you know, for some reason obsessed with peregrine falcons.
That's very impressive, especially the fact that she knows what a peregrine falcon is.
Look, TV shows these days aren't about entertainment; they're about education. So pretty much, you know, you can guarantee they know some animal because they saw it on some TV show somewhere or something like that. So yeah, I'm sure that's how she knows peregrine falcons. But yeah, no, it's funny with kids because you've got to say that their art is good. It's really, you know, it's tricky sometimes. You're like, oh.
Well, I guess having multiple kids as well, you sometimes be like, oh, you know, there's this great peregrine falcon, and then maybe another one's coming out that's not
great stick figure falcon. Yeah, it's tricky. You're like, do I want to encourage them in like this very average thing that they've done? Yeah.
But you never know, maybe it'll come out one day.
With enough encouragement, that seems to be the saying, that seems to be the thinking. With enough encouragement, we should be right. Together. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, well.
That's right.
They're still young, they've got time to learn.
Still.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully if you're at home and you're just listening to Kelsey and I, you've thought of something that you're like, yeah, I remember making that school project, or maybe it's like an adult project. Yeah. You did the COVID lesson.
Oh yes, the hair cutting one was a big one around my household.
Oh really? Okay.
I don't feel like that's actually making something, but definitely maybe shaved a bit too fine on the old husband's head. And
oh, that's fun. Oh, that's what happened.
Yeah.
Right. That makes so much sense now.
No, you thought we paid for that.
Yeah. I'd be interested to know people's like sourdough how bad their sourdough attempts had been in COVID, hey?
Yeah, definitely getting on those trends.
Yeah.
All right, so hopefully you've had a few good discussions around the worst things that you've ever made. Definitely, I don't think there's many people in this world who wouldn't be able to think of something. Let's be real here.
We've all got something we've made that's terrible. Yeah. All really good. Maybe, actually, we went real negative, didn't we?
Yeah. I mean, it is the worst thing, but sometimes you think it's the worst thing and it turns out.
Yeah, that's right.
Really
that was the question, wasn't it? Okay. Yeah. We were right to do that.
Yeah. I think it's all good.
Yeah.
If you are joining us in a group, maybe you want to get around one person's phone or something, because we're about to put up our connection, website.
Yeah,
that's probably a good word for it. Our connection website. Yeah. There's a little form on our website that's going to come up. So if you're in a group, maybe you want to gather around or grab your phones out and do that. Or if you're on your own, you can maybe open a new tab or something. Might be a bit easier. The website, saltchurch.info/WIB, is going to come up on our screen now. And that one's where you can actually connect with us as well. So this is, you know, being live streamed, it does feel a lot like, you know, we're going to try and connect a bit better than just...
I think the big thing is we'd love to know who you are. What brings you to check out Why I Believe? Who are you hanging out with? Are you checking out this with a bunch of people from Salt, or have you just stumbled upon it on Facebook, or you saw a link shared somewhere? We really would love to know who you are and what brings you here, and hopefully later on, you know, maybe there'll be an opportunity where you can write in a question or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But I think the main thing is we'd love to know what brought you to connect with us tonight.
Yeah, maybe ask those questions, or
Yep.
you know, ask if you want us to connect with you a bit more, if you want to know more about Salt even. It's a great place to do all of that. So why don't you go ahead and do that now? Usually I might try and do it myself, but I think it's a bit...
Well,
hard to do that at the moment.
The cheesy things you do on live.
Yeah.
Online things.
It's all in your experience, but I think we're doing all right so far. So
you are, Kelsey. Yeah.
Both of us, we can make it.
That's just what I wanted.
Yeah. So hopefully you've done that one now, and we might just start thinking about that idea of were we made to know God?
Yeah.
Were we made to know God? Actually, Tim's going to go ahead and chat to us about that question now.
Yep.
So I might head off and leave you with that. But yeah,
See
I can't wait to hear what happens.
Yeah, see you soon. So I'm just going to talk us through this topic. One thing we do when we have Why I Believe Live is someone like myself, one of the pastors here at Salt, will talk about the topic. So that's what we're going to do now. But it does occur to me that ideally we would have done this at least before dinner time, or told you to hang on, because I really need you to have a sense of hunger as we go into this. And I'm not talking about some existential hunger. I'm talking about real hunger. Because I want to ask you, can you remember a time when you were really hungry? I'm sure it would have been more effective if you were actually hungry, but I reckon we can all remember what it feels like to be hungry, can't we? It doesn't take too much imagination. But now for the fun part. How would you satisfy that? How do you satisfy your hunger? What way would you choose? Go on, enjoy yourself for a moment. Think about it. What food would you be thinking of? If you're watching at home with others, why don't you just yell it out and say, yep, this one. Oh man, give me some of this right now. If you're with a host that's provided you dinner, why don't you say what they fed you to make them feel real good? But here's mine. This is... look, sorry vegetarians and vegans, okay, this is what I love, but it's wood-smoked pork belly. It's life-changing. I made it on Wednesday for my family. And it's my favourite way at the moment of meeting those hunger needs. But can you imagine this for a moment? Can you imagine if there was no such thing as food? Can you imagine if we were just hungry all the time? You actually can't, can you? Because you know that there is a way to stop being hungry. You know that. You've felt it. You've eaten it. Food exists, and you know how to get it. It's like some profound moment there, right? But here's something very interesting about our world. Every human need that you can think of can be met. So every human need can be met in some way or another. Let me put it another way. There is no need that a human has that can't be satisfied. Think about it for a moment. Hunger. Food exists. Thirst. There is water. Rest. We have sleep. Relationships. There are other people. Air. There is air. Can you actually think of a human need that has no means of satisfaction? I actually can't. And it's an interesting principle, I think, where there is a need, there is always a solution that can bring satisfaction. Now, I find this interesting because of something that people often say to me when I ask them about God. Have you ever heard this? Have you ever heard someone say that belief in God is like a psychological crutch? It's a suggestion that people essentially make up God because they need to. You know, to get through life, like that kind of picture suggests, they need something. They need some help to walk up the slope. Now, this suggestion is probably much older than we think, but it's often associated or attributed to Sigmund Freud, psychologist. He theorised that humans turn to belief in God in order to cope with a cruel and harsh world. It's essentially a wishful thinking, a way of getting through a hard life. Look at what Freud says. It'll come up on the screen. Religion is an attempt to master the sensory world in which we are situated by means of the wishful world, which we have developed within us as a result of biological and psychological necessities. Now that's interesting, isn't it? Do you notice the word there? Necessities. That's just another way of saying needs, isn't it? Freud identifies that humans have an apparent need. History speaks to this as well, doesn't it? And that's Freud's going off this, that every culture known to history has had a belief in God or in gods. Today, the overwhelming majority of the world population still believes in a god or gods. And contrary to popular opinion, actually, belief in God is growing. It's not shrinking. Now, what do we make of that? Well, doesn't it seem like people need God? Freud thought this need was pure psychology, wishful thinking. But there is another possibility, isn't there? What if humans were actually made to know God? Not psychologically, but truly. Not in wishful thinking, but in reality. What if this is actually in our nature? I want to give you 3 suggestions tonight, drawing from the Bible's description of God and humanity. And the first one is that we were made to know God. The Apostle Paul speaks of this to a bunch of people in the ancient city of Athens. You can read about it in Acts chapter 17 in the Bible. I'll read a little bit to us now. Acts chapter 17 verse 24. The Apostle Paul says this to a bunch of people wanting to think about God and philosophy and so on. He says, "The God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth, and does not live in temples built by human hands, and he is not served by human hands as if he needed anything. Rather, he himself gives everyone life and breath and everything else. From one man he made all the nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth, and he marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands. God did this so that they would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from any one of us, for in him we live and move and have our being." Do you see what Paul says? He says that God doesn't need us. God doesn't need anything, but we need him. We are made to know God. By God, to know God. We need to know God, for in him we live and move and have our being. Now this is... There's evidence. We've seen the evidence for this as well across history, and I would argue that this is something that humans have always felt and known to some extent. They've always felt the need for a god or gods, or at the very least for something that they worship like a god, even if they wouldn't call it a god. Which leads me to my second suggestion tonight, that there must be and is a God to know. Do you remember our principle? Where there is a need, there is a means to satisfy that need. Freud thought that human belief in God must simply be wishful thinking, a helpful support, a crutch in a harsh world. But there's a few problems with his theory. First of all, lots of people believe in God who don't find the world to be overly hard or harsh. Secondly, how can he or anyone be sure that we don't actually do the opposite? Think about it this way. Isn't it just as possible that we wishfully think that there is no God in order to avoid the potential reality of what that would mean for our lives? So we pretend, we go into the wishful world to say, no, there mustn't be a God because that would change my life more than I want it to. Actually, I want to suggest that there is a far more plausible explanation for human behaviour, for our exhibiting this need. And that is that we were in fact made to know God, and that there truly is a God to know. We saw this again in Paul's words in Acts 17, didn't we? There is a God who made the world, who doesn't live in a temple built by human hands. And elsewhere we find passages in the Bible like this. This is Isaiah 45 verse 5. I am the Lord, and there is no other. Apart from me, there is no God. Now, this is where we come to a tricky bit, isn't it? That's a big call. I am the Lord, there is no other. Apart from me, there is no God. That's an exclusive claim. we hear something like that with our modern ears and we go, oh, wait a second. It's not very popular today to make exclusive claims like there is one true God to meet our need. But can I suggest something to you? Just because something is unpopular or goes against our cultural niceties, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not true. For instance, it goes against our cultural niceties to say something like plant-based meat tastes nothing like real meat. Now, if I said that on Facebook, I'm sure I'd get a few comments. But it won't change the fact that plant-based meat doesn't taste like real meat. Yet. I'll give you that. It's unpopular to say the American Office was better than the British version. But it's still true. Hopefully I haven't offended anyone there. But you take my point. Just because claiming something like there is only one true God is unpopular, just because we don't like to do that these days, goes against our culture, some people consider it offensive, it doesn't mean that that claim is then false. Some of these things are still true, even if we don't necessarily want them to be. So what if instead we were actually made to know God? And that God is the one true God of the Bible. Well, this is what Christians believe. And it's crucial because our needs can't be met by a false substitute. This is my third and final suggestion for tonight. True satisfaction in life, the satisfaction of meeting that need that we have to know God, can only be found by meeting the need with the real thing. It brings me to the idea of hangry or hanger. Hanger is a thing, isn't it? We all know this. When I am hungry, I don't think straight. I don't feel straight. But when I've eaten, I'm satisfied. I'm calm. I'm happy again. There's a reality there, isn't there? But let me ask you this. If you were hungry and just ate cardboard or filled yourself up with some dirt, what would happen, do you think? Well, you'd probably feel full for a short time, wouldn't you? But it wouldn't be long before you were feeling hungry again, or probably pretty sick. Fake food can't satisfy hunger, not in the true sense, not over time, and not in a way that's healthy. And this is our third point, that we are most satisfied in life when we do know God. Now, I'm aware that for some people hearing this talk, you hear what I've just said, and you might say to yourself that, well, I don't feel like I need God. My life isn't a mess. I don't feel like I have this deep yearning to find God. So, what's up with that? What do you have to say to that? And I guess I want to say that human nature is a very interesting thing, isn't it? There are needs, and there is a good way to satisfy that need. That's the principle. But there are also other ways to satisfy our needs. We can do this very much with our need to know God. Just like we can get rid of our hunger by eating dirt for a little while, or we can get rid of our thirst by drinking other liquids, we can do this with our need to know God. And I think we do, in fact. The Bible actually has a name for it. It's called idol making. You can look that up for yourself somewhere along the line. But essentially the Bible says that what we do to fill this need to know God is that we go and create our own gods. Sometimes these gods have fancy names. Other times they're just ordinary things. You see, whatever that God is, it's whatever we would say is the centre of our life. Whatever that is, that's probably the God. Whatever you would say is the centre of your life, that's probably your God. The God that you have found, that you have put in place of God in order to satisfy the need that you have. And it's important to say, I think, that it works to a certain extent. We can make our career our God, and it works for a little while. We can make our family or our children our gods, and it works for a little while. We can make a hobby or a political cause our God, or most often, just ourselves. We can make ourselves the centre of our life, and we become our own God. Most of us have done that, I think. Most of us have made our lives about knowing and pursuing lots of gods, in fact, in the hope of true satisfaction. And there is truth to say that for a time, that can sort of work. Plenty of people seem to be getting on with their lives okay. Lots aren't, but plenty of people are. We can find some temporary fulfillment. But it's only ever that. And right now, maybe it's working for you or maybe it's not. But can I suggest to you, particularly if it is working for you right now, what if it's just temporary? What if it's simply a pale imitation of true satisfaction? What if it's just working until the marriage has a breakdown? Or what if it's working until the kids leave home? Or what if it's working while the career's still exciting or your body's still good? You see, what if it's just a pale imitation of true satisfaction? The Bible actually has a word for this concept that we're talking about. It's a word that is shalom. Not sure if you've heard of it before, but this word in the Bible points to true satisfaction in peace, in a holistic sort of way, all of ourselves in the world and with each other and in ourselves. It's not simply a feeling of peace that comes and goes, or a feeling of satisfaction that comes and goes. But shalom is a transcendent peace and satisfaction that only comes when our need is met in the way that it was meant to be, which is knowing God and making Him the most important thing in our life. See, shalom is even better than eating pork belly, because when we know God, He meets our need completely and forever. Look at what the Bible says. This is Psalm 16, verse 11. The psalmist says, "You make known to me the path of life. In your presence there is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore." This is just the concept of shalom, but eternal shalom. Now, I want to ask you, do you feel like something is missing in life? Or maybe you don't, but you can recognize that something could be. Maybe what I am experiencing is just short term. Do you long for true peace and satisfaction that will last forever? Well, here is the great message of the Bible. You were made to know God. You were made to know Him truly. And knowing Him truly, the God of the Bible, the one true God, placing Him at the centre of your life is the key to true satisfaction or shalom in life. Well, this is what Christians believe, and it's one of the reasons why I believe as well. I was once far from God, born into a family that didn't believe, and myself, I wasn't a believer at all. I was trying to find my way in the world, chasing after lots of other things. I thought they were important. I thought they would satisfy me. I've been on both sides of this fence, and I can tell you now that only through knowing God can we be truly satisfied in life. I wonder what you think about that. I think Kelsey's going to come back and join us now. We'll get you asking that question amongst yourselves.
Yes. Oh, that was great, Tim. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
I think it's a good, a great place to start when we're trying to think about were we made to know God, and can we be satisfied in life?
Yeah.
Through that as well. I think that's a great extension of that question as well. Are we yearning for it?
Yeah.
So, do you think that we were made to know God, Tim? Like, in your experience, I guess.
Yeah.
But maybe before we kick off on that question, I just want to remind you guys, we know that some people might be in groups and some people might not be. So this could be maybe a good time for you to mute again if you're in a group and ask each other.
Yeah, essentially what I'm doing in the talk is I want to present to you what the Bible says, but also provoke, I guess, in a way, an opportunity to have a good, deep discussion. How often in life these days do we actually get to have a deep, serious discussion about something as important as God, you know? It's a big thing.
If it is true and the claims that it makes are true.
Especially, like, I don't know, I don't know that there's anyone that I've ever met who said, no, I don't want true satisfaction. That would be a rare person. So I guess here's a great opportunity to have a discussion about that, and we'd love for you to do that in the group that you're in.
Yeah. Yeah, and so if you are in a group, feel free to mute, and again, we'll come back with the timer. But before you go, this is also a good time to start thinking about maybe some questions. Maybe in a discussion something comes up and you're not quite sure what the final landing point is. Feel free to think about those questions and maybe start writing them down. And then, we have a Q&A later where the...
Maybe can we flick that text, the slide up for the text number? Maybe if you are at home and you know, as you're thinking about this, maybe write that number down. It'll come back up again
later, but it's a good one. You can start writing some text out, get some questions percolating in the old noggin, and then we'll address them later. But I think this is a good time while you're discussing. Often things come up, and you might want to write them down before you forget them or something like that. I know I have to do that. And
they can start sending them in now.
Is
totally.
That right? Yeah.
They can start
We're ready. We're always ready.
One of our elves is ready to go.
If you're alone, though, if you're not tuning in with a group, we're going to chat again about this question of, were we made to know God? Do we truly believe that? And you can feel free to listen along, and some questions might come up for you as well. So feel free to write that number down and do that. But for now, you can mute your screen.
Mute away.
Yes. And we're going to start chatting about this question.
Have you, Kelsey, have you always believed this, that you were made to know God, something along those lines?
It's honestly something that I didn't, even asking myself now, I don't think I fully realised the answer until I really thought about it. I mean, I think growing up, you often think something's not right, but as a child and even a teenager, you think that thing is that I'm not responsible for myself, or I haven't achieved my life or even set my life goals. I'm just a child. I don't, sort of know. And so you don't put it in the right place in that sense. So I would say it wasn't until I left school and my first few years out, I started to realise that there was something that was not satisfactory about the life that I was living. And, you know, even when you think, you turn 18, you're like, this is it. You know, I'm an adult now. I get to go out, maybe, go out to town or go and vote, or all those things that adults get to do.
I like that you put those as the two exciting things.
And even having those experiences, you don't necessarily feel like, okay, check, I've done that, I'm satisfied in life, I can hang out now. And so that was something that I think now that as I'm reflecting on it, I think it is true that you never feel that satisfaction. And you do feel like there's got to be more. And, obviously I did grow up, I wouldn't say it's a Christian household, but I grew up knowing that Christianity existed. And that there was a God. And so, that was something that I thought just slotted in, and that wasn't necessarily like the priority, but it was a part of my life. And so maybe that didn't kind of feel like it was fulfilling at the time because I wasn't doing Christianity really. And again, looking back, it did feel dissatisfactory in that sense. There's maybe too big of a word.
It's good.
But I think I can say personally for me,
you sensed it to some extent.
Even if I hadn't put the words on it, I definitely sensed it right up until I was a young adult.
Still young. Oh, you're still well and truly a young adult. I'm still a young adult.
Oh, yes, okay.
That's good, Kel. And I mean, look, not to put you too much on the spot now, but do you feel convinced that that's true? The things I said, has that been true of your experience of Christianity? Yeah,
I think since taking it more seriously for myself and owning it as something that I do truly believe, it's almost like there's so many cool elements of it, but one of the greatest things about being a Christian is that you never finish in that sense. You never like, yes, I'm a Christian, I've done all that stuff, let's move on to the next thing. And I think even some of the stuff you mentioned, like careers, even relationships, at some point you feel like you've reached the the limit, or you feel like, yes, I've done that. You know, for me personally, going through those stages of, you know, education, and then thinking, what job do I want, and then getting a job, and you know, every kind of next step you do, you're like, okay, once I finish this, what's the next thing? But at the same time, you're like, I've got an end goal, blah, blah, blah. Whereas in Christianity, you can keep growing in it and growing in it.
That's true, isn't it?
You are already there at the same time.
No, this will be...
concept,
this will be a thing,
good
I think.
thing.
I can see the questions that are coming in. There's a little behind-the-scenes moment. But it'll be an interesting thing, I think, that even comes out in the Q&A of that. What is it... How does it look for a Christian to be fully satisfied in life now, even as we have, like, you know, and hopefully you know at home, if you're watching, that Christians do believe in heaven, the idea of eternity, you know, I mentioned that in the talk. And so what does it look like now, and what does it look like then? And there are differences, but yeah, that's true. You know, because I think one thing I wouldn't, one thing I don't want to act like is that Christians go through this life in some sort of like bliss bubble, you know, like, oh, Christians are always just so happy and nothing
everything just works out.
Everything works, and even if it doesn't work out, they're just so happy even while it doesn't work out. There's some funny truths in there, even as they're not, like, you know, there is the Christian does have a sense of joy and satisfaction even in the midst of hardship that I think is unique. Because of, we know things that God has done for us, we know that we know God and this sort of thing, but you know, the Christian life can still be very hard and traumatic and painful and so on. And so I think this is going to be an important thing as we explore this, and hopefully people at home are thinking through this, that what does it actually look like? What is the Christian experience when it comes to this?
And being satisfied in God and still having to live the rest of this life. It's not like, exactly what you were saying. It's not like you become a Christian and then that's it. But the great, I think another flip side to that is, when you become a Christian, there's so much to learn about God. And even though, I guess, even in that start, you feel fully satisfied because you know there's something so big and great out there. But then you can keep learning and stuff as well, and growing in that. And it's not like it's not a dissatisfactory growth. It's a satisfactory growth because, just cool.
Yeah, it's good.
A side point there.
That's good. No, but I think that's important. Yeah, but I mean, I definitely think I can speak to it that, you know, there was a time where I didn't know God at all, and that definitely there was something missing, like something absolutely missing there, and there were lots of things that I had a little stab at to go, oh yeah, this can work, and I don't think I was like, you know, the danger is sometimes we go, you know, along with some of that Freud stuff that, oh sure, okay, alcoholics maybe need God, or you know, the drug addict, or the person who's gone through the messy divorce and now is at rock bottom and so on. Essentially that. It's only people who are at rock bottom. And I think my experience of Christianity has been anything but. Don't get me wrong, I had some decent problems when I became, well, depending on when I think I became a Christian, but at the same time, life wasn't all that hard and all that bad. And I think for a whole bunch of people who I know who become Christians, it wasn't in the midst of tragedy. It was, it was, I believe in God. I believe I need to know God, and you know, trusting in Jesus Christ, that we'll kind of probably get to at some point tonight, but also in the coming weeks.
Well, I've definitely heard that kind of echo of, you know, I have a lot, you know, and I'm quite comfortable, and you know, I've got friends, I've got family, but there still feels that something missing. Like you were saying, like it's not like you have to be absolute rock bottom to seek out this feeling of satisfaction.
Oh, and I think, like, you come along to Salt Church, and I think it proves it. Like, I say that I don't think there's a whole bunch of people who are struggling at Salt Church. You know, mostly we're a pretty ordinary group of people, and most Christians often are. And so, I think it takes away some of that thinking that in reality, when you look at it, these are people who are not... if they didn't have God, they would have perfectly normal and happy lives, but have found that there is actually more to knowing God in life. And even, one of the most fascinating experiences is that there are even some Christians who I know of who actually kind of don't want to know God, but are absolutely convinced that they have to.
Yeah.
And it's another form of defeating of the argument that, it's only people who really need them.
Yeah.
There are Christians out there, you might be surprised to know this, but there are Christians out there who call themselves absolute faithful believers, but still have their wrestle in terms of, I don't necessarily want there to be a God.
Yeah, I'd like to be able to do things my way.
I want to do things all my own way, but now that I know that there is a God and I can't help but know, then that's how there is. And actually, this is part of the process of Christianity. They're going through that process of finding their satisfaction in God rather than in themselves and stuff like that. Yeah.
Jeez, it is. There's so many elements to this, and so we can see there's some questions coming in already that there's some really good questions that really surround this idea, because everyone's experience is also different as well, and everybody
Absolutely.
has their reason for feeling like there might be something more, or some people just look up at the sky, and that's enough. But for other people, they need, they go for so long trying to find that thing that fulfills.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's the thing, that what we're talking about here is it looks different on the outside, but actually on the inside it is the same thing. Regardless of whether to go back to the talk, regardless of whether people have filled it, have tried to meet that need with career or with a marriage, it's the same thing that they're doing. It all comes back to we were made to know God.
Yeah, there's something missing if that's not there.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's a great place for us to actually wrap up, I think, as well, because it really brings us back to the main point. Yep. So if you are at home, I hope you've switched us back on now. Otherwise, I'll just be lots of arm gestures on a screen.
The encouragement is, if you're at home, actually, in the coming weeks, you can watch this on YouTube or on Facebook. And that means it's easy to watch on your smart TV, I've been told. Yeah. And then you can just use the mute button on your remote. No one needs to walk up to a computer and go,
fiddle with it, click the button.
Will we actually unmute them?
Can't be bothered this time. Yeah. Or just leave it. Please don't do that.
They wouldn't hear us.
No, they wouldn't know either way, would they? So we're back now, and we're going to start talking about some of the questions that have come in. And I'm super keen to jump in. There's some great ones here. Yeah, so I think we just get straight into it.
Okay.
Do you need a second to flick through?
Let me just look at these questions. I think the one thing is if any of them are... So look, we've got the first two questions are kind of about the one true God stuff and different religions, so they can kind of go together, I reckon. So I might tackle them together. But other than that, we can get into it, I reckon.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me just... we've sort of covered briefly what it is, but I might just read out that top one, which is pretty similar to the... Do
we want to just tell people the question again, just in case they've
if you're still thinking of questions to send in, what we're thinking about is, were we made to know God? And, have a think about that. There's plenty of questions around that. Why you might feel that we are, why you might feel that we're not. That could be a good way to look at it as well. I think Tim needs the challenge. Maybe needs is the wrong word.
Tim needs a lot of things. Anyway.
It could be a challenge though. Yeah. See if you can. But let's jump in with this first one. So you said that God in the Bible is the one true God. But what does that mean for other religions? Is Christianity better, or do they just not exist? And how can you prove that he's the only one?
Yep. Yeah, so this is a massive question. I guess one I thought might come up tonight in terms of, I've made a massive statement that in our world is not something you often hear, which is that essentially, yes, Christianity is the one true religion, and that the God of the Bible is the one true God. And please hear me, I totally get that is like you're just not allowed to say those things anymore. Yeah. But we do say those things because we believe they're important. I think we need to start at this place. It's worth seeing that some people think that all religions can kind of work together somehow, that, we can all find in the religions, they've all kind of got their own path to God. I think that's something we need to, first of all, rule out. I think most people, most kind of adherents, followers of each of the religions, whether it's Islam, whether it's Buddhism, whether it's Christianity, so on, would all say that's not possible, and also a little bit offensive, to be honest, in terms of it makes very small, it makes little of their beliefs, and that could be possible. In truth, having studied most of the major religions anyway, that actually isn't possible. One needs to be right, or all need to be wrong, essentially. There are some things like Baha'i, for instance, where Baha'i essentially is exactly that religion, that all religions have something, but yeah, I don't think that quite works. So, yes, the claim that the God of the Bible is the one true God. It does mean, I think, that other religions are not true religions. They are what Freud was talking about. They are essentially filling that need with a form of wishful thinking, not the true God, but other gods, so what the Bible calls idolatry or idol making. And it's not so much... I do think Christianity is better. I do think it is better for a host of reasons in terms of... let me just contrast it, for instance, to Islam and to Buddhism. In Buddhism, the promise of Buddhism is nothingness. It's just nothing. That's what nirvana is, and that's what you are aiming towards, to escape the cycle of birth and rebirth. So not to a better place or anything like that. Now, if that's true, well, fine, but it's worth seeing. I don't think that's better. Islam, for instance, I tell you what, it's not better if you're a female, because I'm not overly convinced that there's any evidence in Islam that females and it's unclear as to what happens if you're not a wife, but certainly at least wives, their eternity is to serve their husbands in the next life. Christianity has a pretty marvellous, I think, story, which is that you get to spend eternity with the God who made you in complete joy and satisfaction. That sounds pretty good. So I think Christianity is better, but I think most of all it comes down to true. Is it true? And I think this comes into our second question that we got tonight as well. How can you prove that your God is the only one? And I think this is where there is actually a distinction that can be made between the religions. Now, guys, we're in a very short, limited amount of time. There's things that I can point you to. There's a book called by a guy called Ravi Zacharias. Is it Jesus Among Many Gods or something along those lines? But there's a book by a guy called Ravi Zacharias, and he compares and contrasts Christianity to the other religions, and does that very well in a way that is much more thought through and methodical than I'm able to do right now. But here is what I would suggest. Christianity is the one truth, one religion, we could say, one faith, one God, who I think has given us concrete evidence that he is the one true God. Now, how has he done that? Well, I think he's done it through the person of Jesus Christ. I think in the Bible's description of Jesus's, the promise of Jesus, in what we call the Old Testament, the coming of Jesus, his birth, his life, his death, his resurrection from the dead, and the Bible's description of what that all means, in that whole package, what you have, I think, is concrete evidence that God is real, because he's visited us and he's shown himself to be real, and that he is who he says he is, and the things I've said tonight, the other things the Bible says, things like we were made to know him, are also true. Now, guys, I'm so aware that I've just gone, massive bomb there to go, all of that's true. I'm fully aware, and Christians are fully aware, that for people who have not engaged with Christianity much, that sounds absolutely mental. God come to earth, die on a cross, resurrection from the dead particularly, and so on. But all I can suggest to you is there is an answer to this. And I think Christianity, as opposed to the other religions who, let me contrast very quickly with something like Buddhism. it's really not clear the roots of Buddhism in terms of Buddha's existence, where some of that teaching has come from. Buddhism as well has branched off into so many fragments that it's very hard to know what core Buddhism is. Unlike Christianity, I think you can easily trace through the core of Christianity and what we call the gospel, the good news about Jesus Christ. And I think you can actually trace that in terms of trusting in what the Bible has to say as being a faithful witness or account of what occurred in Jesus' life. It's different to what's happened in Islam in terms of Islam is one man, Muhammad, receiving from God, supposedly, revelation, but it's only ever Muhammad. He is the only one who's received the revelation. There are later writings in the Hadith, but they are essentially not the core. The core is what Muhammad received from Allah, but only Muhammad ever received that. In the Bible, hundreds of people saw Jesus. Hundreds of people listened to him. Many of them, 4 particularly, and then 1 or 2 later guys, wrote down what they saw. And it fits together. So, I think the reason why we can trust that the one true God is that he has revealed himself in himself, Jesus Christ, God, coming to earth, and that we can know about that through reading the Bible.
Yeah, it's so cool. And I think one of the great things is that you do get that, like you were talking about, the people, the eyewitnesses of Jesus as well. Because, you know, we could just be... I think there's some pushback in the past about Jesus being another prophet or something like that, rather than as he claims to be God. And so it's good that we can actually read those eyewitnesses as well, if we're going to use him as our thing that we're staking really our lives on. No, that's good. All right, cool. What's our next one? Let's move on to our next question now. So this one says, can I focus on God but still desire material things? I like to travel and I enjoy stuff. And I think that's a pretty similar experience to a lot of us, especially living in 2020 Australia, although the travel is not quite so much a thing that we get an option in anymore. But I'm sure a lot of us are raring to jump back into it. Yeah, and it's a great question. It's an important question. And I guess maybe sorry who overwrote this in, I'd like to broaden it just a little bit for everyone in terms of, you know, can I just have a fun, enjoyable life, right? There is a sense and understanding that people have an idea about Christianity that when I become a Christian, I need to live a certain way. That means life's going to suck. That'd be my summary of it. And I want to acknowledge that there are changes that come with a Christian life. In week 3 of Why I Believe, I think we'll have a little bit more of a focus on that. What does it actually mean to be a Christian, and what does that change about our lives? Because I think that is really important. Jesus says, what does it mean to love Jesus? What does it mean to, I spoke about making God the centre of our life. What does it mean to make God the centre of our life? Well, it means to listen to him. It means to follow his commands, as it says in the Bible. And so I don't want to shy away from that. I don't want to trick you and go, oh, no, you don't need to do anything, just enjoy God, whatever that means. No, but here is the fascinating thing, and 2 things, I guess. To answer the question directly, you can still travel, you can still do things that you find enjoyable, but they might change. One of the important passages of the Bible is that as we seek God, he will give us the desires of our heart. Now, I'm paraphrasing that from the Bible, but there is an interesting thing that happens to the Christian. It is that as God becomes the centre of our life, that he begins to change us to desire different things because we see him. We see how good he is, and we see how good his thing is, how good his plan for us and plan for the world and so on is, and how good the life in him is. So here's the interesting thing that happens. When you make God the centre of your life, you start to desire material things less. You start to desire material things for different reasons. I still desire to have a nice house,
But where before I would have only desired to have a nice house for my own comfort, now I desire to have a nice house so that I can welcome other people into my house, and we can do church in there or do Bible study in there, is just things that Christians do, in a way that is having God at the centre of the thing that we do. So I might have the same house that I would have, but the reason that I have that house, my motivation for having that house is very different. One had me at the centre and one had God at the centre, and that's what changes. So God changes people who put him at the centre. And so I want to put the question a different way. Will you, if you focus on God, will you still desire material things? And the answer is less and less. Less and less as God changes you in that relationship. Yeah.
I like that idea of it not being a sudden thing as well. It's not like one day you did and the next day you don't. It's like a nice changing.
Yeah, that's right.
A relationship.
It is part of it's a transformational relationship. As you know, maybe one way to do it would be as in a marriage, things change. You know, my wife, she likes doing certain things that originally I wouldn't like doing. I just wouldn't have been interested. But as I come to love her and know her, I start to like doing the things that she likes to do. And she starts, and so there's a little bit of that going on. And the big thing is that we think that will be such a loss because we're just looking at it from where we are now.
Yeah, like
but actually,
yourself,
I don't feel a great loss. God tells me don't go out and get drunk. I don't feel a great loss there, even though that's something that I used to enjoy doing a long, long time ago. But now I'm like, actually, this is heaps better. And I really like
those,
it.
those helpful things.
Because I want to honour, God is at the centre of my life, I want to honour him with my life. Changes what we desire.
So is that actually does play in really well with our final question, because I think the things that we end up desiring also reflect potentially like the nature of God or who God is. And so the question that we have here is, what does it look like to know God? What does it look like to know God? That's massive. Could there be a better and a bigger question? But
No, what a wonderful question. What does it actually look like to know God? Well, I think first of all, let me take it back to an answer I gave a little bit ago, which is that first and foremost, I think it is to know Him in His Son. It is to know Jesus, because you get this in John's account of Jesus' life. One of the things about Jesus is God revealing himself to the world. Jesus is God, and he has come to the world to reveal God to us, and we can know God through him. Now, we're going to talk a whole bunch more about this next week at Why I Believe, but let me just say it this way. If you are interested in knowing God and what it looks like to know God, then the best thing that you can do is pick up something like John's Gospel or Mark's Gospel, which is just a book in the Bible. You can just Google Mark's Gospel or something like that. And by reading that, you will start to get to know God. As you check out who Jesus is, you are checking out who God is. And you can get to know God through Jesus by saying, even as you look at what the Gospel of Mark has to say, by saying, God, I want to get to know you. Now, there is some things to this, okay? I don't want to... this is like, I'm dipping into my talk for next week, but it's not as simple as just going, hi God, are you there? Can I know you? There is a little bit more to it, but let me get you started if you haven't already started by saying, go and check out one of the gospel eyewitness accounts of Jesus' life, and you will start to get to know who God is by looking at Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked a bit about Jesus already tonight, and I think it's cool. It's cool that we get that picture of God through the person of Jesus.
Yeah.
God man.
There's a countercultural statement. Jesus is cool.
Jesus is cool.
Yeah.
So you heard it first.
No, well, next week I think we'll see actually that very thing.
He's quite cool.
Cool might not be the right word. But
he's something, all right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if your question didn't get answered tonight, sorry, we've actually just run out a bit of time here, which is good, I think. It's good.
That's great. We'd rather leave you with more questions. You can ask them next week.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the point. Next week we'll be back. So we're going to be... What are we looking at, Tim, next week?
So next week, I want to engage with what's the problem? So it's all well and good to go, oh yes, you should know God and you can find true satisfaction in God, but it's actually there's a little obstacle. There is a thing, we call it sin, and there is an obstacle that needs to be overcome. And so I want to look at that next week and see how do we actually get to know God if there's a problem between us and God.
Yeah, how can we know Him?
Yeah.
That is a great question, and I can't wait to tune in next week, or be here next week.
You won't be tuning in?
I won't be tuning in,
No.
but I'll be hearing it live.
Very good.
Just as we all will throughout our live stream. So that one will be here on our Facebook pages, on our YouTube channels next week. But before we go, I just wanted to remind you once again, we actually do have our website, saltchurch.info/why I believe, and on there is that place where you can connect with us as well. Feel free to write some more questions in there, or ask something that maybe doesn't totally relate to tonight's topic, but if you want us to talk to you about something important in your life, we want to be able to do that as well.
Love to meet you. Love to know what brought you to Salt.
Exactly, yeah. We would love to get to know you a bit better. So that one is on our website there. You can fill out the form. You can do it now, or you can do it later. You can find our website either way.
Do it now. You won't do it later.
Let's be honest. It is a lot easier to do it now. So that's easy to get onto now if you want to do that.
Yep.
Otherwise, we also do church here on Sundays, don't we?
We do.
Yeah. So that's only a couple of days away now. We have our live stream at 10 a.m. Or if you want to meet us in person, bring along a face mask, and we do actually meet here at 275 Kira Street on Sunday afternoons or evenings, 5 p.m. You're very welcome.
Love to see you.
Love to see you.
Yeah, every Sunday.
Every Sunday. It's great. For now, that's sort of all we have, but I think it's still great to mull that question over during the week. Are you fully satisfied? Do you think there's something missing, or were you made for something more than this? Were you made to know God?
Yep. And particularly if you're with a bunch of people, don't feel like the night has to end there. Like we'll tune out, but what a great opportunity to keep talking about things that matter, important things. Yeah. Yeah,
there's plenty of stuff to talk about in that as well. So we're glad that we could chat about it now. But don't feel like it's all over. It's not all over yet. But we will be signing off now.
Yeah, we'll see you next Friday.
See you next Friday, guys.
Good on you. Ciao.
Ciao.
Oh.